All right, well, the recording is started. Good evening, everybody. It is a good time to do some training. We won't go too long tonight. I'm just going to give you an overview of everything that's in what I'm calling the TrustBuilt Proven Manual. We talked about this sometime last week before all the snow hit us. And I've revised this today, and I want to really present it to you guys to give you a chance to ask some questions, maybe document some things I didn't think of, and hopefully make this better. So every time this is presented, it just becomes a little bit better each time. So committed to mastery, never able to accomplish perfection, but pursuing it wholeheartedly. So for starters, this whole class that we're going to talk about is about how to think like a technician. So this is the standard for elite HVAC technician thinking, performance, and culture. So this document here is to be a guiding document of the ideals, the things we want to aspire to. I by no means am going to live this out perfectly, neither will you. But if we have a North Star, a thing that we're aiming towards, hopefully we can continue to get 1% better every day. So I'm going to start with a story, and this is to be interactive. You guys feel free to chime in. Most HVAC callbacks are not caused by bad equipment. They're caused by good technicians making bad thinking decisions under pressure. So callbacks, which when I say callback, you know what I mean, right? Like you fix something and then they call you back because it's not working. It's not really a skills issue. It's a thinking issue. So I want to paint for you a picture here of a typical service call. All right. We'll call this the low suction trap. All right. Here's the setup. And you guys tell me if you can relate to this if you've done some service work before. A technician responds to a call for poor cooling. He checks the system, observes a single dominating symptom. Oh, low suction pressure. On your two gauges, the blue gauge, it looks low. The change of state temperature is below freezing, like we've talked about in class recently. When the unit runs, the cooling improves briefly, but the comfort doesn't hold. So the technician's decision is, well, the suction is low. It behaves like it's starving. It must need refrigerant. It must be low on charge. So like any good, hillbilly heating and cooling does, he decides to celebrate the victory and says, well, I'm going to add charge. Look, the suction pressure came up some. The supply air temperature actually dropped a little bit, and the space feels cooler. I think it's a win. It's beer 30. I'm ready to get out of here, so I'm done. So at that moment, everything looks better. The tech leaves, confident that the job is done. Looks good now. The pressures are up. The vent is cold. Problem solved. But then what happens 2 days later? The callback. So the system's frozen, a block of ice. Why is that? I'll give you guys a chance to answer. Why would the adding refrigerant not fix the problem? Anybody?
The unit's overcharged.
Well, yeah. Well, now the unit's overcharged because he added refrigerant. But what was the original problem here?
If you don't have enough heat transfer, then your coil's going to freeze.
That's true.
Could be a dirty filter.
Dirty filter, dirty coil. The coil could be covered with dog hair. Filter hasn't been changed in a year, even though every customer says they just changed it yesterday. The blower's under stress. It's not able to move the air because of all that restriction. So the actual problem was not refrigerant. It was airflow, right? When you added the refrigerant, the bad technician actually masked the real problem temporarily. But then 2 days later, when it was a block of ice, it made it clear. So we're going to call this a failure. And every failure leads to success. But every callback, as you can see here, doesn't come from a lack of effort. The guy was there. He tried. He actually got his tools out of the truck, which is more than most can say. But he had unproven certainty. So the takeaway here is if it wasn't proven, it wasn't actually diagnosed. He actually didn't solve the problem. So the root cause analysis, let's break this down. So the wrong domain was chosen. I know we talked about domains last time, but I'll mention that again here shortly. He made bad assumptions without testing things. He treated one indicator as proof and just moved on to fix the problem. There was no verification before leaving. So in our world, a logical failure is actually worse than a technical failure. It'd be one thing if he left the disconnect off, that's, he technically failed. But if he didn't actually follow the logical steps to finish everything out, I mean, that's actually worse. So when he did the original repair by adding the refrigerant, he actually created a new failure. Now the system's overcharged. So I'm just going to refresh your memory from last time. We talked about domains, and I mentioned there were 5 domains. And so I've got them listed here: airflow, refrigerant, electrical, controls, and mechanical, or other, some sort of other scenario. Other can be a user error. You know, they left the door wide open. They left the thermostat set to 90 and they wanted it in cooling and it was in heat or whatever. So the domain, as just to break down the simple definition, is the part of the system you're looking to blame first, where you're going to start your investigation. You're a good detective, you're a good scientist, you're going to make your theories, but you got to start with what domain are you looking at. So the low suction pressure can be caused by restricted airflow, dirty coils, or blower issues, not just refrigerant. So even though our symptom is a low suction pressure, we want to look at all the domains. And the first domain to look at is airflow. A lot of times airflow will show you a problem that's there. It becomes foundational, really. So you can see here, airflow being the foundation, refrigerant, and then electrical being on top of that. If you have an airflow issue, it'll manifest itself as a refrigeration problem like we just saw. It's not very often that a refrigeration problem will do some sort of weird thing to airflow. So once you know the airflow is good, you can go into other domains to look for the answer. So this is kind of a foundational thing. I mean, you got to breathe, and the system's got to breathe. So you can throw your gauges on it, but if it's a stopped up coil and dirty filter, can you really do anything more? You're not getting accurate readings. First step is to make sure that the air will actually flow. So that's just logic. And this brings me to what we touched on last time, and that's defining your identity. So which do you want to be? You want to be the guy that guesses, that relies on intuition and patterns, and I've seen this before. Well, this is what the book told me to say and what to think. This is my what to think guessing game. That kind of guy, that kind of technician, just for you guys who've not gone out into work as a tech full time, that's a liability. That's a huge liability. A company doesn't want to hire a guesser. Anybody can guess, and even a broke clock is right twice a day. What you want to be is a proven tech, a different identity. Now you're proving, predicting, and verifying. You're speaking in evidence. You're not just giving your opinion. You're not going by gut instinct or feeling. You're challenging your assumptions. You're willing to be wrong in the effort to ultimately get to the answer. You test your theories, you prove it, you defend it, you verify it. If you prove yourself wrong, you go back to a new theory. You don't let your ego get in the way. That's what a proven tech is. So I use that, I'm coining that term because I think we need to think of a whole new identity. The trades are often looked at as just blue collar grunt work. But if you're an HVAC technician, you have to have a lot of high technical knowledge to be able to do your job well. And that means that you've got to have a systematized way of thinking about things. And that's what this term, the proven tech, really represents. You're not a guesser who's a liability to a company. You're an asset. Okay. So I think I mentioned this last time, but that's a goal you'll want to aspire to. And you guys who are fundamentally in an apprenticeship program, learning the fundamentals, your stage will go into starting to develop this skill. You have to be committed to mastering this. This is not something you're going to learn overnight. Over time, you'll eventually train your brain to think like a proven tech, moving in that direction. So you'll go from certified to proven. You're going to be somebody who's disciplined in your thinking, disciplined logic. And that's what professionalism is. And then eventually, of course, as you work your way up to lead in companies or to even own your own company, to become licensed, you're the one who has to set the standards for others to follow. So I think this framework is a way that you can think about that that'll hopefully help. Now, I just dumped a lot on you. Do you guys have any questions before I move on? If not, I will keep on rolling. So you might be asking the question, well, how do I become the proven tech? How do I go from just trying to figure it all out to actually knowing how to think through it? There's 5 laws, 5 commandments, if you will, that are going to be essential for us to do proven work, to make sure we're proving our work here. And here they are. We'll go over them and then break them down individually. So the first one is we don't make an assumption without measurement. You don't just assume something without measuring it. Second, we don't make a repair without proof, evidence. Third, we don't leave, no departure without verification, meaning we verified things are good. So we don't just leave without verifying that the system's running right. Fourth, we don't explain to the customer unless we ourselves as a technician have real clarity on the root cause of why the problem happened. No explanation without root cause clarity. All right, and then fifth, we don't have any confidence unless we have evidence. So we don't go based on assumptions and hunches, thinking up in our mind what we think the problem is. We go off of actual evidence. So if we have evidence that leads us to a conclusion, like low airflow is the reason we're having a low suction pressure, then we can make a confident decision. But we cannot have confidence in confidence itself, to quote, The Sound of Music. So diagnostic is not intuition. To be a good proven tech, it's about using disciplined logic. So that philosophy is something that I'm calling the TrustBuilt philosophy, 5 laws of diagnostics, teaching technicians not what to think, but how to think. So this framework, if it's helpful for you guys as you get into the trade, is how you can frame all of your problem solving, that you don't make assumptions without measuring. You don't make repairs unless you've proven that the part's actually bad. You don't depart and leave unless you know the system's running right. You don't explain things to the customer unless you know exactly why it went bad, and you don't have any kind of confidence in your decisions or your hunches without evidence leading you there. So to go back to our tech earlier who diagnosed it wrong, he failed because he didn't gather enough information across all the domains. Remember I said the 5 domains. He didn't go and investigate all the different avenues that there could be a problem before he committed to just topping it off. So these 5 laws, are to prevent that sort of callback failure. So let's go back and go through these laws and see how the tech in our story failed. So no assumption without measurement. So the tech assumed that a low suction meant low charge. He never measured airflow. He never measured static pressure. He never measured restriction. So assuming just felt right. Well, I'm just going to top it off and see what happens. So his assumption replaced measurement. So we don't do that. We don't make assumptions without measuring. So some sort of measurement, pressure, temperature, whatever it might be, noise level. You're using your 5 senses and your tools at your disposal to make actual measurements. All right, the second law that this guy broke, he made a repair without proof. So adding refrigerant, adding gas, and hoping for the best, it felt productive, but it actually wasn't because there was no proof that the charge was the actual problem. And of course, we're using this as an example, but this really is true of really any type of diagnostic skill, whether it's refrigerant based or with tracing down a short circuit in a wire, whatever it is. Temporary improvement is not confirmation. So let's say there was an example of like a shorted wire. You found one short and you just assumed that was the only one that there is. It couldn't possibly be that mice chewed up more than one wire in this system. So you don't make a repair unless you've got proof. You don't make an assumption unless you measured it. Third, you don't depart without verification. So the tech left when the system started cooling, but he never verified its stability under load. He didn't let it run long enough to actually confirm that there was no other problems. If he did let it run long enough, he would have seen that some frost would have started to develop because the system was restricted in its airflow. So just running is not fixed. Like, oh, flipped it on. Oh, unit kicked on. We're good. It was running. I'm good. I'm out of here. Actually measuring to the point where you see the system stable. Let it run through a cycle. Put the set point just a couple degrees below where you have it so you can watch it run and shut off, and then bump it down some more to have it kick back on again, and take all your measurements. Meaning don't just run out the door. Verify everything before you depart. The fourth law, as we're talking about this technician and what he did, is that the tech couldn't clearly explain why the system was failing. He treated the symptom instead of identifying a cause. So if you can't explain the failure simply, you actually, as the tech, don't understand it yet. And you can't explain to someone else what you haven't already internalized and understood. So, fifth law, big one, is that confidence without evidence is not professionalism, it is risk. Remember that fifth law, like we said, is no confidence without evidence. So what is confidence without evidence? That's not professionalism. You're taking a risk. If you feel confident in something, but you have no proof that it's actually trustworthy, then that's just taking a risk. You have no clue whether it's going to be good or bad. I feel real confident that this TXV is bad. Do you have evidence that it's bad? No, I just have a good feeling that it's bad. Well, that's not going to get you anywhere, but probably a callback. The confidence wasn't earned in our situation. All right, so that's kind of the 5 laws in action and how our guy broke it. This is the actual process that we should be taking. I'm calling this the proven diagnostic loop. And it's really simple. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really simple once I break it down. So I'll go through it kind of step by step. The first thing is we identify a symptom. Again, we talked about measurement. So you actually measure something tangible: temperature, pressure, conditions, humidity level, amp draw, voltage drops, whatever it might be. You're measuring a symptom. Here's what's not a symptom. Well, it doesn't feel like it used to feel. Well, that's a starting point to get to find a symptom. But if you went to the doctor and said, well, I feel warm, well, he's not going to say, oh, you feel warm, here's something for a fever. He's going to measure whether you actually are warm with a thermometer. Are you having 102 fever? Oh, yeah, we need to get something to bring your fever down. But it's an actual measurement, not just a feeling. The second thing is the domains selected. So once you have a symptom, you need to choose and think, what domain am I in? Am I talking about airflow? Is this an electrical issue? Is this a refrigerant issue? Is this some sort of mechanical failure issue? A physical issue like water overflowing in a drain pan? So you look at the domain and you go into that domain and you use your scientific reasoning like you learned in like 7th grade science class. You form what's called a hypothesis. And so a hypothesis in plural, meaning more than one, is hypotheses, like you see there. So you come up with one or more theories or ideas about what you think is the problem. Okay, so you go from figuring out what arena are we talking about. If we're talking airflow, I don't need to think about refrigerant. I don't need to think about electrical. I'm just talking about airflow. My hypothesis is that I've got a bunch of dog hair, especially when you see the guy has 12 dogs. I got a bunch of dog hair on my indoor coil. That's my hypothesis. I'm going to run a test. Well, for that, that's as simple as doing a visual inspection, measuring static pressure, and getting 2 proofs. We'll talk about the 2-proof rule later, but you want to collect at least a couple data points and collect some proof. And then at that point, test your theory. You want to test and prove that what you found is true. And when you see something like a bunch of dog hair and dirty filters, it's enough information to say, I think that this condition is causing the problem. So I can go ahead and clean the coil, change the filter, and now verify, go back to the beginning and identify whether the symptom is still there or whether it's been remedied. And then see if in that same domain, your theory proved true, like a good scientist. Scientists, who study and build rockets and send people to the moon and build iPhones and build skyscrapers and all that, they don't just wing it. They don't just kind of guess. They figure it out and they test and retest their theory and test it so many times that it proves it to be true. So you're following that fixed loop of developing a theory, investigating it, going back to the beginning and seeing what exactly is going on here. Am I right or wrong? And being okay with proving yourself wrong. If you deviate from this loop, you will create failure. You will create a callback. What you don't want is for you to take what's called the ego shortcut, where you go straight from, I see a problem, I'm going to make a repair, and you become a part swapper. See, logic is challenged in the field. Callbacks are treated as data proving a violation of the laws. So when you get a callback, it's just showing that you violated the laws of logic, skipping the steps for the sake of speed, comfort, whatever. It's supposed to remove ambiguity here. You're supposed to be able to go at it objectively like a scientist or like a doctor and look at it without any emotion, without any ego. And don't just be lazy, because let's face it, what we're really fighting against is our own internal sense of laziness and wanting to take shortcuts. It's human nature. Water runs downhill, human nature runs downhill. We want to take the path of least resistance. We're all guilty of it. So this loop, same thing, instead of a line, it's in a circle. We start with the symptom, we select the domain, we form a hypothesis, we test deliberately, but notice that sometimes you might be kind of back and forth testing a theory and then seeing it wrong and making a new theory in the same domain, or maybe you deviate to a different domain. And you think through it until you've collected enough proof to prove your theory true. You could write your theory in a scientific journal. It's so accurate. You're trusting all the proof you gave. Then at that point, you go into making the repair, and then you verify stability and verify that you were really right. Because it could happen that you make a repair after all the proof in the world, and then after the repair reveals other issues. Oftentimes we have to tell, guys in the field, don't promise the customer that once we make this repair, we'll have you back up and running. It might be that you find another issue after you replace the part or change out whatever it might be. Changing out a capacitor can reveal that once the compressor runs, it has this horrible clanging noise because the internal parts of that compressor are rubbing against each other and they're failing, and it won't actually compress. Now, that can't be found unless you actually run the motor. I mean, you can check the windings to see if it's failed electrically, but you would never know that the compressor internally failed mechanically unless you got it to run. So that's why we always tell the techs where I work, don't promise the customer anything. Say, we're going to make this repair, and then once it's complete, we'll see what other issues reveal themselves, because you might go back into another diagnostic loop of finding more problems. And that's okay. That's part of this job. That's why we get to do it. Every day is different, and every day is exciting. All right, so let's go back to our scenario, and let's say it's replayed by a proven tech. And these steps here aren't exactly the same as the loop, but you'll get the idea. First, we define the symptom. Instead of not cooling well, the tech puts down the suction pressures below the expected range. Cooling performance is degraded under runtime. Comfort loss during peak load. So he documented some things that are actually measurable. Secondly, select the domain. Well, which system domain could reasonably cause this symptom? Instead of defaulting to refrigerant, proven tech looks at airflow first. It says, hey, it could be a refrigerant, maybe, but there's also other things that could cause a low suction pressure. I'm not going to just jump to conclusions. All right, so I'm going to check the blower first. I'm going to check the coil condition. I want to make sure that I've got good airflow. And then getting into testing and proving that theory, restricted airflow is driving the refrigeration symptoms. If I fix the airflow, now I don't need to add refrigerant. The system was never undercharged. It doesn't have a leak. Airflow was corrected, then verifying everything, you see it was actually fine. And so that's how a proven tech would do it, using logic and using proof. Okay. The other kind of core element I want to talk about as we kind of start to wrap this up, a few more things here. The 2-proof rule. So as you're in the stage here of collecting proof right here, in making your repair, and you're testing your theory, you don't want to go by just one piece of evidence. You want to have at least 2, 3 or more would be great to confirm that whatever you're thinking is actually the problem. So you don't want to simply say, well, this motor is bad because it's hot. The motor being hot is one proof. The motor not running, that's the second proof. Obviously, that's the symptom that you first got there. But when you check the windings inside the motor and find that they have shorted to ground, now you understand that it's tried to run, it's overheated, it's shorted to ground. You have temperature and resistance as 2 proofs. And that's enough, and then you could also, whatever other data you might be able to take. Maybe you were able to get really high amp draws on the last preventative maintenance visit 6 months ago or 3 months ago. So you have that high amp draw, it's really hot, the windings are shorted. You've got enough information to say this motor is definitely bad. I mean, shorted to ground is enough right there. But what I'm saying is that having 2 or more proofs lead you into that direction, feeling confident. It's not just, well, I've experienced this before. Oh, I see a little bulge on the top of a capacitor. I know it's bad. Well, you have to check it with a meter still. Evidence then becomes your proof. All right, so the 2-proof rule is just a good I guess you could call it just another logical tool to keep in your tool belt for your thinking. Again, everything we're talking about doesn't really pertain to the tools. It's just about your thinking and how you think about the call you're on. Another thing to avoid is what I call the false finish trap. That's when you're celebrating the fact that the system gets up and running again, and you think that you're good. You think that that's it. As long as it was running before I got here or before they had a problem and it was cooling fine, as soon as I flip it on and it's running fine again, I'm good. I'm done. No, in the case of a service call, you want to have one of those like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King type endings. Just when you think it's over, you still have a lot more to go. You need to make sure that the whole system completes a full cycle. The pressures and temperatures stabilize. Airflow's good. You know that the controls and safeties are verified. If you had a furnace that was tripping out on a high limit and you replace the limit switch and you see it fire off, you want to make sure that you don't just immediately jump in your truck and run down the road to Bojangles. You want to make sure that it's not because there's some sort of other issue there causing the flame rollout to trip, meaning that there was some sort of separate thing that once you replace the limit, you didn't realize that after 10 to 15 minutes of runtime, it overheats, or that the blower slows down and it causes it to trip, and that you're just going to be chasing the same symptom without getting to the root cause. And that would be fixed if you just stayed with the customer a long enough time to see what actually happens. So remember our rule, no departure without verification. If we stick to that rule, you don't have to worry about getting caught in the false finish trap. Hopped in my truck, ran down the road. 2 hours later, they call in the office, hey, your guy was just here and it ain't working. Now we're paying for more gas and more time. And the next call you were going to go to, we can't bill anything for that because you can't go there now because you got to go back and fix this issue. It just becomes a cycle of endless dollars being spent and time being spent needlessly. When if we just stick with it, have some patience, we're good. So to summarize, if you want fewer callbacks, the solution isn't becoming more confident. I have confidence in confidence. It's better thinking. It's changing the way you think. So we want to be logical. We want to protect logic in our company cultures, in our ways that we handle ourselves. We're not talking about our effort, our intent, our experience. Those are great. It's great to have 110% effort, to have the best of intentions, have years of experience. But if you can't prove something like a good scientist, it doesn't matter. So from this point forward, as you guys handle how you're going to troubleshoot and diagnose a system, you need to be judged by whether you have proven it's wrong or it's bad, whatever part it is. Proof compliance, not effort, intent, or experience, proof. So these unforgivable sins, we don't want to see part swapping, pattern guessing, or early exit, false finish, run out the door, hiding uncertainty, blaming the equipment when it was actually because you should have checked all the parts when you were there. These are unforgivable sins, and they will be punished accordingly. And this then leads us to, what do you now do? Well, number one, if you aspire to the identity of being a proven tech, not just a guesser, that's great. You're going to live by the 5 laws I mentioned. You're going to use that diagnostic loop I mentioned. And you're going to think about the 5 domains and where you're at and stick with the customer and don't leave too soon. Getting 2 pieces of data to make sure your theory's right. That's all going to be up to you. It's going to be you aspiring to this identity of a tech who's the trusted guy that people go to. So I would recommend jotting these down or take a screenshot of this or whatever. But whenever you're on a service call, just ask yourself some quick check questions. Like, what did I test? Think about, all right, I actually tested voltage. I actually tested amp draw. And then I tested, temperature coming out, and it definitely was too high. Okay, what proves I'm right? What proves I could be wrong? How could I prove myself wrong? So go in either direction. Am I definitely confident in this one thing being wrong? And what other thing am I thinking of could I prove? Could I be completely wrong about this? So the exit standard also is, of course, if stability is not proven, you don't leave. You don't just bolt out the door. So the kind of things you should be thinking of, is that proven? Show me the proof. Have I proven this to the customer? Ultimately, I'm accountable to them and to my company I work for. So you do some self-interrogation to avoid you having to have some of that boss interrogation. You know what I mean? Getting called into the principal's office and having to explain yourself. Well, why did you guys change the capacitor and then find out after you rode all the way to the supply house because you didn't have one in your truck. You came back, you put it in, and then you find out the compressor's bad. Couldn't we have known the compressor was bad before you left the roof? That kind of interrogation, conversation, not too good. So do self-interrogation. You won't have to have boss interrogation. So with that, think about giving yourself a score. Using these 5 criteria about whether you've really clarified the symptom, the domain, you know which part you're talking about, have you tested everything accurately? Are you using 2 proofs? Are you verifying everything? Like, give yourself points on a scale of 1 to 5. And if you're in the 12 points or less, you still are a guesser and you need to work on this. If you're in the middle there, you're at risk. If you're 24 to 30 points where you're like, I'm nailing this every time, those are the elite proven skills. You are like a proven tech in the making. So the whole goal here is, of course, to build disciplined thinking, changing the way you think. And it will not happen overnight. I guarantee it. You'll have to spend hours and days. And so this is a mantra you can live by here. I'm going to prove it before I fix it. I'm going to test before I conclude the call. I'm going to verify before I leave. And the hardest part, looking yourself in the mirror and saying, I will challenge my own thinking before anyone else does. So when I said here, like self-interrogation, you take the time to really sit down and scrutinize yourself and your logic. And if you have to call a supervisor and ask, hey, this is what I'm thinking, let me get your opinion, and be okay to have that humble attitude to ask for support and verification and making sure that you don't doubt yourself and you're on the right path. But you got to challenge your own thinking before anyone else does. So again, confidence without evidence is the most expensive mistake in HVAC. So you want to be a proven tech. You got to stop guessing things, start proving them. And then with that comes a lot more money, because if your dispatcher can trust you, your boss can trust you, you go on these calls, you make the company a bunch of money, you don't get callbacks, all that stuff's evaluated. Good companies are tracking how much money you're making the company, how efficient you're being. And all this goes back to proving it and using logic, using diagnostic skills. Hopefully this as an overview will help you with that. But I think going forward, if you were to want to get into this in more detail, I'm going to be doing the online course I was telling you guys about, and I'll have an opportunity to be able to get in there for you guys so you can go through all this stuff in detail. And I'm going to have an online community where you can talk to other technicians. The goal is to build all that out, this year. So I'll have to get all of your contact information. We'll get you in there, get you set up for it. But that's kind of the gist of it. So I'm going to open it up now for any questions. I can scroll back and talk about any topic you guys want. And so I'll leave the floor to you guys. What do you guys got? And it doesn't have to be just about this. If you have questions about, we've been talking about heat pumps a lot lately in class. If you want to talk about that or EPA stuff or whatever, I'm good.
Really, could you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, really, that was very good. It's very good. At least I can say we had a couple of young guys that are taking this class. Really, guys, this is the way. I'm saying this because I know I had like 10 more or less years doing service with electrical and maintenance they do in NC State. For example, the guessing guy, when NC State, I found a couple guys that they don't fix anything. All the time they go wherever it is. We had a very complicated system or very easy. They don't fix it the easy, not even the complicated, because they're guessing. They always, the first thing that they see a relay, a breaker. No, it's that breaker, but they don't test anything. And another one they can say, yes, yeah, I see. I have been behind them and testing, and I have been fixing even stuff that is not electrical. For example, a trade-off, positioning for the trade-off, all this stuff. Because I went there, I read or someone tells me how to test it. I went to test it. I say it's not what we used to thinking. The other simple example, like the example the technician, sometimes I see it there. Because you had a little experience, like 1 year, 2 years, you visit that problem, like for example, the airflow, that he say it need more refrigerant, for example, the customer, before you do that, it that work, yes? And you believe the next one, you just guessing or saying, it's the same because it's the same problem that the other lady have. You don't have that time to test it. You go just put more refrigerant and you didn't test anything because you was thinking that you already had enough experience or
you're in a rush.
or in the rush or because of the same problem and you didn't pay attention and you realize it, then you had then you need to go back to fix it and like you say, at least in business like company and go back is really you lose a lot of money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's funny how everyone's in such a rush to do it the first time, but they don't realize that by having to go back and do work a second time, they've spent more time than if they had just done it right the first time. My wife always has a phrase that sticks with me. It haunts me. She's like, lazy people work twice as hard. And I'm like, because every time, we're trying to teach our kids to clean stuff and keep up around the house and whatnot. And, you do your job like halfway. Well, now you've just got to go back and do it again. You put the broom away, you sat down, now you got to get up, get the broom out and sweep that again because you didn't get all the dirt. It's just a laziness and being in a rush.
And most that I see it sometimes, even that happened to me doing electrical, because now the customer is really looking you now you really need to challenge you really approach because you want them to call you back or at least making a better impression. Then now you really need to work more harder and fix it because now you don't want to screw it again. Right. Now you really it's more for me. I have been like this more challenges because now I say for this one and now I need to come back. Now really when I open my mouth, I need to be 100% sure that I am saying that. Exactly. That's it, something like this.
Yeah, because customers don't care about our schedule and how many times we have to drive our truck out there. They just want their problem fixed. Like they don't want us coming out 3 and 4 times. No one wants that. I mean, it's hard enough to get somebody into your house to get work done or at your business or whatever. The customer doesn't want to have to be inconvenienced over and over again. They want you to show up, fix the problem, or at least know what the problem is and put them on the right path of fixing it. But all this back and forth, we're going to come out 4 or 5 times. I've been on the receiving end of those phone calls. How come your guys keep coming out here and you haven't solved the problem? Well, we honestly just didn't do a good job. I'm sorry. We're going to stick with it. We're going to stay on this roof for 4 hours and watch this unit because it's obviously doing something when we leave. And we've had to do that. And then we found problems that weren't evident until we stuck with it. We did not verify before we left. And so we dealt with that literally. So it happens. And so, but that's why I said at the outset, these are ideals to aspire to. Obviously with anything in life, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to aspire to this ideal, but at least if we're aiming towards it, the old saying, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. We want to aim at something noteworthy and good and aspirational and not just be like, well, I do what I got to do. I just get by on my personality. Like, no, we actually need to use logic and reason and figure out what the problem is, fix it and prove that it's right and not be guessing all the time. So. All right, very good. Who else has any questions or comments? Don't all jump up at once. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging with me. I'm going to stop the recording. And like I said, I'll get some information over to you about joining my online program once it gets started. Again, because you guys have been my students and you're letting me have you as guinea pigs to try out this content on you. I'm definitely going to give you guys preferential treatment as we're getting started with this. So it'll be cool. So I'm going to press stop on the recording and then we can go into some other stuff if we need to. There it is. Stop recording.